Okay, I think we're ready to go live.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. This is June 27th, and our meeting, we're welcome everyone into the session, and hopefully they can turn off their...
Press that for your email.
Okay, we have somebody, if you can all check and mute yourselves. Thank you. That's awesome. So we don't have background noise. Anyway, I'm Kiki Miller. I'm Coeur d'Alene City Council member, and I'm coordinating this organization. We have a full agenda today. So I want to make a couple of quick announcements and then get into a presentation, and then we'll do subcommittee updates. So a lot has been happening. Number one, under announcements, if you would all please review the information that was sent in the email to you about the feedback that we need on the important work of the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. We'd like you all to talk to your boards or councils, respective leadership organizations, and send some feedback via email as to how you think the future of this organization should evolve. There's a number of questions that are going to continually be on the top of your emails to remind you, but if you could please have that discussion with them so that we have some good feedback from this advisory group on how we should structure moving forward the organization that you're now involved with. Obviously, we want to have it sustainable, and I think everyone agrees that we're going to have housing issues in our community for quite some time. So we've got some tremendous momentum, but we need to make sure that we have some good solid feedback and get done what our community wants us to do in that area. The second is with all of this information that we're putting in here, again, our mission is to be a resource for the region so that they can learn what it is that they can do to help us with our housing issues. All of these surveys and reports that are so important that you all reply to are part of that mission. That way we have the ability to share in fact, we are scheduling upcoming workshops with council members and planning and zoning commissioners to help them go through the tools that we've created already and some of the results of the community information and survey. So it's very important that you're engaged with us, and we appreciate that. Thirdly, I'd let you know that Gary Hall from the North Idaho Building Contractors Association will be presenting to us at our July meeting. He's going to go through the information about the building industry economic impact in Kootenai County. There was a formal study done and some follow-up information. So that's going to be a presenter at our July meeting. And lastly, I think Lauren with the Coeur d'Alene Economic Development Council had a meeting, a request to share. Lauren, can you jump in for a second?
Yes, can you hear me, Kiki?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Wonderful. I will pull up my information. I'm in a building and I'm getting out of the building so I can be heard. I didn't know how soon I was on the agenda. Here we go. All right. So yes, I have an announcement. Jenny Gilliam, the CEO, president of the CDA EDC, applied for an AmeriCorps Vista member position. We were awarded this grant, and we're desperately looking for a member that might be brought on to do this task. We would work on housing and also workforce, but primarily housing. And it's through our Talent Pipeline Management Program, TPM. And basically, we would bring on this individual to do some questionnaires. I'm sorry, I'm trying to concentrate, within 2 to 3 industry sectors. And we would hire this individual to work out of our office and out of their home if need be. So they would do some public speaking. They would have to have computer technology skills, just general skills, organization, and report back. But they would help us with this housing. So I have a link. Yeah, so I have a link here. We're also wanting to increase the monthly stipend. It's called a living stipend, and we're wanting to hopefully increase that to make it more desirable. And basically there would be an education award for anybody over 55 and older that could be transferred to their grandchild or child or stepchild.
Okay.
Grocery allowance. There's so many opportunities. I have the job posting, and I'm going to see if I can link that, Kiki, into the Zoom, chat area.
Okay,
So,
feel free, Lauren.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can put that in the chat box if you'd like, and or
put
just
it in there.
email it to Hillary, and she can send it out to our advisory group members. And if
Oh,
anybody
wonderful.
has information on a person
On
who
an
might
individual.
apply for that Vista, that'd be great. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Sorry, there's so much information. I'm just scanning through it. Yeah, I will
No problem. People
All right,
who
thank you for the opportunity.
are interested will have a link to follow up with. So we'll make sure all of the representatives get that.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Okay.
Kiki.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All righty then. So next on our agenda, Jennifer Smock has graciously agreed to, hey, Lauren, Lauren's having some challenges here. Thank you. So Jennifer Smock from Windermere Realty has graciously agreed to present to us today, give us an update on the housing market that she has been tracking. And I wanted to tell you, Jennifer, you guys do a fabulous job with the market updates, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share with us for a few minutes today. So Jennifer.
So how long do I have, Kiki?
We've got about 10 to 15.
Okay, I'm going to talk fast. So
yeah,
I'll probably
we have
skip
a little
over
more time than that, and I can hack off a bit of the end of the agenda too. So just this information is important. So thank you for sharing.
Okay, well, this is a presentation I just did at the Hayden Chamber of Commerce. So it was like a 30-minute, but I'm going to peruse through it pretty quickly just to give you guys the highlights. Okay. So thanks for having me on here. If you guys want detailed information on any of this, just make a note and email me and I will get you whatever it is that you need. Okay. So this little gem right here is a residential snapshot. So it really kind of shows the change year over year. And for this is single family in Kootenai or in Coeur d'Alene for the first one. And this is on less than 2 acres. So this is going to be like your typical subdivision type house or midtown house in Coeur d'Alene. So you can see that our active listings and homes sold are both down from this time last year, but we have a median sales price that's up 24%. So I'm sure all of you know the difference between the average and the median, but we as realtors track the median more because it's a better representation really of what the consumer, how much more the consumer is paying or not paying based off of this time last year, because it really takes out those big swings from, the $27 million sale to the $5,000 mobile. Okay. So the cluster of what people are buying in Coeur d'Alene area is about 610,000. In Post Falls, same story, median's up 23% to 555. And then I put in Shoshone because Shoshone is that area where, if we have like a first-time home buyer or somebody that's on a very limited budget, typically they'd go over to the Silver Valley because they could have, a nicer home at a lower price point. But you can see what's happened because of that. There's so much competition over there that their median sales price is up 44% to 295,000. They don't have obviously the same amount of inventory that we do here in Kootenai County, but still the prices over there have just skyrocketed. I mean, almost 300,000 for a single family home. So overall, Kootenai County is up about 22% from this time last year as far as the sales price. Median at 551, and then you can see the difference there on the average sales price is 641,000. So we are definitely seeing what I like to call a pivot in the market. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. But honestly, here in Kootenai County, we've had a compound annual growth rate right around this 3 to 4% for most of the last 30 years. And then we started to see it a little more uptake. And you see we've got a 9 and an 8 and a 12. So that's, each year, if an investor purchases this property, they're going to say to the realtor, well, what's my return on investment each year? And we say, well, historically, historically a compound annual growth rate in our areas right around 4.5 to 5%. But with the last few years, that's been blown completely out of the water. This is not normal. Obviously, we all know that. And you can see, I guess, if there is good news out of this, that we're at 17% from this time last year as far as a compound annual growth rate goes. So I'm hoping that that will slow that increased trajectory down quite a bit. Part of the issue and the reason why, and I'm sure most of you are very aware of this, but where, you know, how did this happen? Like, where is all this money coming from? And you can see in this chart here that if you look at the Northwest or the West, these are what we call our shoulder markets. And these markets are ones that typically this is where our buyers are going to be moving in from, right? And they have an extreme amount of equity in their homes because they also have experienced such high trajectory. So, you know, California, $120,000 and average equity, Washington, Oregon, you know, everywhere that they're coming from, they have so much cash. So they come in here and they're making those offers that are really pushing those price points up. But with the last interest rate hike, we have seen that completely go by the wayside. I mean, it's gone from like 5, 6, 10 offers to crickets, literally. And Lindsay's on this, and Lindsay can attest to this as well, because we talk about this sort of stuff in our general membership meeting, or excuse me, in our board meeting for the realtors. But, you know, it is drastically slowed down and there's a pivot in the market. So this is our inventory chart of kind of like, you know, the inventory shortage, like, you know, what happened at our lowest point. I think we had just right at 200 listings total on our entire MLS. We're back up well over 1,000, and every day we're seeing anywhere from 50 to 75 new listings. But the interesting thing about that is there will be as many or more price reductions as there are new listings. And so that's giving us this, you know, we definitely see the pivot and the shift in the market. The buyers are saying absolutely not. With interest rates now, we can't afford that. Prices are slowly starting to come down, but definitely not to any kind of a crash type level. But we have the same amount of inventory as we did about 10 years ago. And as you know, we've grown so much more than that. So, I don't know. I'm not going to get into this. This is building. You guys have a builder coming in next month. But basically, the talk is, you know, if we can't afford to buy the resale, maybe we should build it. Well, that doesn't make any sense either, because right now, you know, it's about 25%, give or take, of the building costs is regulation costs. And so, you know, with the price of materials, with the price of land, you know, you cannot bring a new home to market any cheaper than you can a resale. And there's just not enough of them coming on. So this time last year, for instance, we had 1,300 building permits pulled, right? That was $390 million of real estate back into our community. About 500 remodels. If I can't sell it because I can't find another place to go, right? Nobody wants to sell if they can't find a replacement. We're going to remodel, which takes even more inventory out of the market. But this year you can see we're way, way behind on that. So typically, as you know, the builders aren't pulling their permits until they're about ready to start on construction. And so we're going the wrong way as far as the building goes. And a lot of that has to do with limited labor, cost of supplies, getting the supplies. You know, they just aren't able to bring product to market nearly as quickly as we would all like it. And so it's more than half of where we should be right now. So if you're looking for, like, you know, what's resale versus new construction, right? Because that's what we're talking about, is how do we bring these homes to market a little bit less and more affordable for the workforce housing. I mean, we've got resale units that are selling at an average sales price of $663,000, where new construction is pretty much exactly the same. Where new construction, if you look at the average sales price, it's 38%, where resale was only 17. And so much of that difference between the 17 and the 38 has come from regulatory costs and the cost to bring the product to market, right? With labor, with copper prices, with just pretty much anything that goes into it, not to mention appliances, right? Appliance packages are almost 100% above where they were this time last year. So it's 28% of our market. It needs to be a lot more than that though, obviously. So if we look at kind of the shakedown, I'm going to open this whole thing up. And I'm going very fast and I apologize. So you can stop me or ask questions at the end. But just a few years ago, our first time home buyers were buying in this the 200 to 300, $200,000 to $300,000 range. And that was almost half of what the buyers were purchasing, right? So 75, almost 80% of it was under 400,000. Now your entry level buyer, if you look over here, that's where they're at. They're at a bare minimum of 400 if they want a stick built house. They can get into this smaller price point right here, less than or right at 5% under 400,000, but that's typically a manufactured mobile home on leased land. They don't even own the land, right? And they're selling equally as well and just as fast. So you can see, you know, there's just such a breakdown between what's affordable as what we're talking about, where we were just literally 3 years ago than today. So looking at our average year over year sales prices. So in our entire MLS, as far as single family less than 2 acres, these are your regular subdivision type houses. They're up 17% from this time last year. This is the entire MLS. So our entire MLS takes in Bonner, Boundary, Shoshone, Benawa. So we're spread out all over, right? Some areas have experienced much more growth than others. If you look at residential over 2 acres, right? These are wants. And so that market is up 19%. I would predict that this number for residential over 2 acres and residential waterfront, that a price appreciation is going to level out considerably because these are wants. And as money gets tighter and lending, obviously the interest rates are getting higher, it's going to make it less affordable. Now, most of these waterfront homes are cash buyers though, right? They're somewhat insulated from the market. That's a 7% increase. But one of the largest appreciation that we've seen is our vacant land. So, and that's part of the issue right now with bringing new product to market. We're, as developers, we've brought a lot of land in large parcels, and the prices that it is proposed to us makes absolutely no sense when you break it down into what a developer needs to do to get this home ready to actually start foundation on. And so that's where part of the huge disconnect with builders is that they're saying, I can't pay that price because for one, I can't, it doesn't make any sense. I won't be able to build this at any sort of a profit. And the builders are not cashing in on this crazy market either. I mean, they're lucky to make their margins a lot of times with how long it's taking to come to bring their product to a close. So 68% increase over vacant land. Condos are 5%. This is a lovely number. We love 5%. That would be, just ideal if we could do that. Now, multifamily, it's so high because it doesn't really exist in the last year. There has been very little movement as far as anybody letting go of their multifamily units, and not a lot of stuff being built either. So I talked a lot about the assessed values. I don't know, Kiki, if you even want me to go into this. This is a whole nother presentation. I can't hear you, Kiki. You got to unmute.
If you can just do a couple minutes just to refresh everybody's memory of what we're talking about and how that's affecting the real estate market.
Okay, sure. So the assessed value. So, most everyone opened up their assessed value and probably about fell on the floor, right? Going, oh my gosh, my house has doubled in price and now my taxes are going to double. But that's not really the way this works. The assessor has to get between 90 and 110% of the assessed value. So if you feel like your value is too high, reach out to a realtor, find out if this is accurate. But most of the time, it's going to be somewhere between that 90 and 110. Okay, so then what happens is all of the taxing districts, and let me see, I don't think I have another slide on that. Why are we not moving forward? No. So, sorry guys. The taxing districts had to put their budgets together. All those budgets come together. They get their 3% if they want it. But if they want more, they have to petition for that, right? And so just because your tax base has gone up doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes are going to go up in the same proportion, right? So if it's gone up 50% or 100%, your taxes aren't going to go up the same because there's so many different factors that come into play. Some people's taxes might even go down because, for instance, in downtown Coeur d'Alene, you've got a house that everywhere around them is a VRBO or an Airbnb. In this last year to 2 years, they've lost their homeowner's exemption. So their tax base has gone up, but you still have your homeowner's exemption. So they carry a little bit more of your burden. So there's a lot, it's extremely complicated and there's a lot more that goes into it. But the moral of that story is, you know, your taxes aren't necessarily going to double. They're not going to go exorbitantly out of whack. They will go up more likely than not, but how much, it's hard to say. We should know that. Well, we'll know it by November, right? So I'm not really going to go into this. This is more of where people are coming from. We kind of talked a little bit about that. Our showings are starting to pick up. Obviously the last couple of years since the pandemic, but what we're starting to see all of a sudden, as soon as those interest rates kind of flipped the switch and started going up, things came to a kind of a screeching halt. It is starting to pick up and it's starting to get a little bit easier, right? But what I really want to say is, you know, this is nothing like it was last time. For those of us that lived here in this area, or well, pretty much anywhere, all of us lived through the market crash back then, right? And you can see it on this chart, 2007, loans were, you know, we were funding loans like crazy. There were so many people getting no doc, zero doc loans, massive, you know, we have a shortage of inventory now. Back then we had an overage of inventory. There was too much out there, too many options. We had investors coming in and they were buying 10 homes at a time. So, you know, this is nothing like that. This is not driven by the lending, right? This is driven by basically here in our area, a pandemic that happened and everybody's saying, I want to get out of these blue states and I'm out of here. I'm cashing out and I'm moving up here and I'm paying cash and I'm willing to pay $100,000 more than the next bidder. Right. And so that's what happened with our pricing here. But we know that history is not going to, you know, it doesn't always prove that there's a recession coming. Right. So I'm hoping that this is going to be the same because it's not based on that. So this is a little bit about, you know, just kind of showing our last couple of recessions that we've had. You know, this isn't like 2008. And I just had an article in the press, and I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but there's some pretty unpleasant comments about the way that, you know, I predicted we're not going to crash. Our market's not going to crash. We're going to level out. For sure. And we are leveling out every single day. We're leveling out, but we're not going to crash. So yeah, we're leveling off. Price adjustments like crazy. Kiki says, wrap it up. We're done. That's it. That was so fast. I hope you got something out of that.
You know what? As many of you know, we've been on a road show doing presentations on the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. And I know that I have done a 30-minute presentation in 10 minutes and you did a fabulous job. I need to pull in one of our committee reports that has to leave for another meeting. But Jennifer, can you stay for another few minutes? And then some folks had some questions. Would you mind answering some of those as we get to that? So I'm going to jump down. Lindsay Allen is heading up one of our subcommittees, and she's going to give us a little update on what's happening from the Coeur d'Alene Regional Realtors.
Hi, everyone. We met last Friday. Kiki was able to join us. We really wanted to kind of hone in on what our function or role would be for this task force. And then also we, of course, discussed kind of, as Kiki mentioned, I think in our email, kind of how this task force grows and steps away from all this volunteer efforts, and then, but also how do all the entities involved stay involved and have a specific role. And I think one thing we came up with is that we like the idea of having some sort of action item. And so one of the things that we're really going to try and do, and I think is going to be helpful coming from us, is doing kind of what we can with our agent community to educate them on the regional housing and growth issues partnership. As realtors, we are, you know, face to face with landowners, builders, developers, and even just consumers who, you know, inherit plots of land or who have, you know, deep ties to the community and who are frustrated with what they're seeing and who want to potentially give back. So we feel like of any of the entities involved here, because we have this front-facing, you know, consumer to consumer or business to consumer relationship, I guess you could say, we want to try and be the forefront of the education about this. So we're going to try and take on, you know, educating our agents so that we can educate clients and consumers about the things they can do with their land to help contribute to the cause here. And also working on a legislative level, Idaho Realtors, we have a tie-in with Idaho Realtors at the state level where we've been successful in getting things done at a legislative level for, you know, increasing the amount of the homeowners exemption. That was all a push through Idaho Realtors, removing the deadlines for homeowners exemptions and for circuit breaker exemptions so that they can be applied for throughout the year and not having to wait for a window. Realtors were successful in that during COVID. We also were very successful in pushing for, you know, our industries, construction, lending, real estate to be considered essential services so that we could keep moving those things forward. And obviously housing was a big part of our success and recovery through the pandemic. So we want to pull in Idaho Realtors as well and do what we can to probably, I think, bring some peace of mind to property owners and developers and builders in the idea that if you create a land trust or if you put any sort of deed restrictions on your property based on occupations, that we have that safeguard there for developers and builders so that, you know, one of the things I think we've heard is that developers and builders are like, well, we would love to do all this stuff, but what are the incentives for us? Like, how do we protect ourselves from not getting sued? Or how do we know that a landowner might say, how do we know that if we want to put a deed restriction for first responders or government workers or teachers, how do we know that that's not going to be a violation of some sort of land use agreement? And is there something that we could put in place, you know, from a statutory or legislative level that will protect those people that want to do these things? And I think that we can spearhead that activity. I think that's totally the right vein in which we can be effective in this whole task force. So sorry to wrap up real quick, but educating our agents so that we can go out and do this work, but also, oh, go ahead, Kiki.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and also, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to work with the Building Contractors Association on a state level to try to move, have a stronger voice, a united voice to help some protections for folks who want to try to help with any of these restrictions that can help us with local workers to get into housing. So great.
Yes.
And then you had some, I think that in the meeting, I know you have to go to another 3:30, so I want to make sure that you can get out on time. But I think in the meeting you had a few other goals that your task force is going to take a look at later on. So we'll look forward to having you give us an update as to how things are going and maybe be able to answer some questions for us at our next work group meeting. So we'll give you a link to that.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks. Did you have anything else you needed to add, Lindsay?
No, just that we're trying to figure out what our role is. We like action items. If you guys have any ideas or you've run across someone who's curious about this stuff, you know, we're more than happy to be the resource or send people our way. We'll keep you updated on our, I guess, educational initiatives that we're doing with our agents to try and be what I'd like to maybe call it as evangelicals for this cause, you know, going out, finding people, recruiting people, educating people and creating more awareness for this.
Right. Well, you guys are the ones to do it. 2,100 members strong and are the ones who are dealing with the landowners that have voluntary control that can help us out. So I think that's a fabulous first initiative and start. So thank you for all of that. Okay, I will go back to Jennifer, if I can. I think that there were some people who had questions. Hillary, I was not monitoring the chat box, but if there were any questions, please send them in through the chat box now, and Hillary can get those queued up for Jennifer. While she's doing that, I will tell you that Jeff Voller contacted me, and he is in another meeting, but he is the head of our schools subcommittee, and asked me to give you a brief report that the committee's drafted a resolution that they're asking the school boards to consider supporting and taking to the Idaho Association of School Boards in July. If approved, the 3 school districts in the county will present the resolution to other districts at the conference to ask for support. The resolution is to amend code to increase the term allowable for a school plant facility levy from 10 to 20 years. This excerpt is from the presentation for consideration at the local school boards. It's called their statement of purpose, changing the allowable term for a school plant facility reserve fund levy from a period not to exceed 10 years to a period not to exceed 20 years in Idaho Code 33804 would allow districts to access funding under the school plant facilities revenue reserve fund levy. It would allow for more reasonable thresholds for voter approval based on the dollar amount the district needs. Further, extending the term will also allow districts to ask the voting electors of a district for the necessary amount of funding over a long period of time to help maintain lower local tax rates. This modification will assist school districts in expanding options available to manage their need for large construction and maintenance projects in a district. So if this is passed by the boards, it will be presented by them in July. I also wanted to jump next on our agenda real quickly to open space. And I know that we don't have David Callahan here today, but Brooke, if you are able to unmute, I would introduce Brooke Saucer. She is with the Planning Community Development Department, I think it's called, for Kootenai County. And Brooke, if you would could you just say a couple words about where you were from and some things that you might be able to help us with or contribute that you have talked to from the county level, as well as sitting in for David when he's not here?
Yeah, so David has asked me to help out with open space work. My professional background is mostly coming from public land management agencies. I worked for a smart growth organization in Jackson Hole, where I worked on affordable housing and open space and transportation, and made my way back here because this is home. And so happy to help out on the open space committee, excited about this group. So thank you, Kiki, and others for organizing this. In terms of open space, I spoke with David earlier today, and we don't really have any updates.
Great. And you're still moving forward. I know that the last update we gave to the group was that there was going to be a business meeting of the Board of County Commissioners on a potential upcoming bond. So we're still waiting for that agenda item. So
yeah, I mean, it's going forward. There's still a couple more steps in terms of legal counsel to get the details of the bond going, but so far it is green lights.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look for another update at the next working group report, and we will keep posting on the weekly update page on the website what's happening there. So welcome, Brooke. Next, you can tell it's gotten sunny because nobody's here, but they all are sending me their reports to read. So how fun is that? Okay, so Maggie Lyons has said that she is encouraged. She sent me a note that said she can't be here today, but was sure that Corey or Hillary would discuss the upcoming Arpa funding information. She added that it's encouraging that home ownership development appears to be within the scope of work, and that based on the revised draft, there are some concerns of how it's going to comply with fair housing constraints, but she also feels that there is excellent dialogue going on with a couple of local developer builders who want to include worker housing units in their developments. And really for them, timing is the issue. It's not that it's not a desire on their part to do so. So she is working with one-on-one meetings, as am I, with a number of builders and organizations that we will hopefully be able to see some things happen in the next couple of months to have some projects launch. So that was from Maggie. I don't think Carrie's here, so not much happening with residential owned community campaign information. And guess what? Another person couldn't make it. So I'm going to give you a quick update from Candy, and that is on the Kootenai Home Share Project. Their 501c3 is the only thing still pending. There aren't any hiccups. That's just a piece of timing. They've received their initial contribution to their startup campaign, so they are moving forward. They have board members in place. All of their documents for their organization are done. Their budget for 2 years operating expenses is done, and that will be presented to a couple of people to ask for a funding piece from them regarding that. The main key to that budget is a marketing campaign that is going to be directed towards home providers and basically educating the home providers on how home share works. And last but not least, they need at least 2 volunteers, and they're looking for another board member. So if you want to get involved, or if you could please push out to your members of your organizations, if they're interested in getting involved in helping, that need at least 3 people, a board member and 2 other volunteers. So that's what's happening with home share. And then I would go to, me again. Okay, so only thing I can update you on is under the revenue generating. We did talk with Lindsay and the Realtors Group, got a presentation from the Idaho Home Partnership Foundation on how a revenue generating product to them could occur. It's something that they're going to look at down the road once they finish one of their initial the campaign that she had talked about on educating our landowners and property owners on what they can do. But there is that foundation in place. I have a meeting with a number of development directors from financial institutions next week on exactly how that would look to have some financial institutions step up and do an annual contribution into that foundation, and how those monies can be put back into local worker housing projects in Kootenai County. So that will be a report next month. The healthcare worker and public safety group has been having, just with a lot of activity that's been going on in our town lately, a little bit of a challenge scheduling. So we have a group of 7 people that are going to sit down, and what I will be presenting to the working group and to this group next month is their mission and goals and what the timeline is to have some expected action coming out of the public safety 7-member task force group there. Taryn, I believe that Marie was the one who was out of cell range, and you were going to do a quick walkthrough on the rental survey that just came out.
All right, I can do that.
Good.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Okay, can everyone see my screen now?
I can.
Okay. All right. So I put a link at the top of the regional housing website here, and this is the easy way to get to information on the rental survey results and the press release, and it'll take you right here. There's a spreadsheet that has some rent estimates for the county, and I believe it also compares Ada County. This is historic rental data. We talk a little bit about that in the press release, which was published verbatim in the Coeur d'Alene Press, so that was nice. There's also a PDF here that discusses the results of that survey. And I think the easiest thing is for people to read that press release, Kiki, because we really boiled it down here. But you can see that overwhelming, the renters who were surveyed, 93% of them, more than that, had an increase in rent in the last year. The average increase was $376. And we're looking at average rent of about almost $1,700 a month. One of the most interesting statistics, I think, was that the average percent of income people are paying towards rent is more than half of their income. And I know Maggie has shared many times that the ideal number is closer to a third or less of your income. So all of the results are there on the website. I think it's a really good read. It tells us a lot of what we already know, especially if you have been renting in the county or you have any family members who have been renting in the county.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Again, the importance of having this real, not national or statewide, but actually local Kootenai County information is really helps our decision makers and our community leaders and businesses get a handle on, what it is that is driving the housing crisis here, and hopefully leading them towards toolkit items that can help us make some effect. So having said that, I don't know if Jennifer was able to stay on, and were there any questions, Hillary, that came up for Jennifer? I kind of cut her off and didn't give her a Q&A opportunity.
She has dropped off. She did
Okay.
answer one of the questions in the Q&A. So there was a question from Christine Harding about receiving her assessment notice from Kootenai County. Of course, it reflects her homeowner's exemption of $125,000. She says, one of my sister's beefs was, as they are increasing our value in property taxes, shouldn't they increase homeowner exemption amount? You see this happening. And Jennifer responded, I certainly hope so, but she cannot speak to if and when this would happen. So that one was answered. There was one question in the chat that she did not see or respond to, so we might want to send that to her. So Len Crosby asked, what percentage of buyers are corporations or those intending to rent to third parties? So just trying to compare, of the buyers or the locals being beat out by outside interests. So
maybe we can tie that back into when we come up with the update of the PowerPoint for that we're going to be presenting to the community on the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, that we can update what the market trends are with her then.
I think in the University of Idaho study, that figure was 54%, but of course that's dated. That was a year ago now almost.
Okay, that's thank you. Okay, all right, so then we've got about two more quick items. I have an updated PowerPoint that I was going to share with you all at this meeting, but I think we're going to run out of time. So I'm going to table that until our next advisory group meeting. And in the meantime, I will be continuing to add to that. It's basically the PowerPoint that you've seen before, but a year and a half's worth of work tied into it, and giving everyone that I give the PowerPoint to kind of a good snapshot view of where this partnership is going, why it exists, and what its goals are. So I will be sharing that with you when we have a little bit more time. And Hillary, could you give us a brief update from Corey and the state as to where that our recently released ARPA funding outline is?
Absolutely. So Corey was unable to attend today, and so he just wanted us to give a report out on the Idaho Workforce Housing Fund. There is a draft allocation plan that is on IHFA's website, so Idaho Housing and Finance Association. They're working on setting a date and a time for a virtual forum so that community members and organizations can provide feedback on that. And they're looking at sometime in the middle of July. So for the working group, we'll be sending around that draft allocation plan to get some feedback and send that in. If there's other organizations, it is available. So if anyone is interested in seeing that, feel free to reach out.
And when we have the date for that, we could put that on the Housing and Growth Issues Partnership website under events. So we'll refer you all back to that sometime early July. Keep an eye out, and we'll make sure that you know that that virtual forum is available to everyone. Okay, the last thing we wanted to do today is touch base on a survey that's probably the briefest survey we've ever done. We are following up on another area where we're trying to provide resource information on the economic impact of volunteerism in our community and how it is tied to the housing crisis. What is happening with volunteers statewide? The Idaho Nonprofit Association has told us that out of the Panhandle, that over 75% of the nonprofit organizations said that they were reliant or extremely reliant on volunteers to carry out their missions, and 60% of them did not currently have sufficient capacity to do so. So one of the things that we're trying to look at is exit surveys from other nonprofit organizations have given a slight indication that there are a lot of folks having to get a second job or go back to work full time, or stay home because of no daycare. And much of this is tied to what their monthly mortgage and rent rates are becoming. So we are going to do a really brief survey, and it's going to be 2 surveys actually. Hillary is going to walk you through how that's going to work. But for everyone in the advisory group, you will be getting an email with this information in it. And it's very, very important that you follow through with this brief survey for us so we can get that data back to decision makers and actually help provide that resource. Go ahead, Hillary, if you're ready to do that.
Okay, so as Kiki mentioned, we'll be doing 2 surveys. So those will be live very soon. So the first one will be for the organizations. So again, if you're on the advisory committee or a working group member, please participate in this. So kind of just starts out talking about the goal of the survey and why we're doing it. Again, it would be the organizations that would take the survey, and we really only need 1 survey response per organization. The deadline would be July 8th. And there are 4 questions. So kind of just trying to figure out, how you utilize volunteers and if that does impact your organization, right? So these are the first 2 questions. And then here are the last 2 questions, just trying to get that important information. And then this is the second survey that we are asking organizations to send out to their volunteers, and primarily targeting their past volunteers. So again, looking for why there has been a change, why people have left volunteering. It's just a 1-question survey. And so if you have an organizational list that has contact information for your volunteers, please send this out. And so it's really just trying to, again, figure out what was the main reason that volunteers cannot continue volunteering their time, and hoping to gain more information from that. I will be modifying the surveys to add organizations to those. So for the first survey, we know what organization is being represented. And then on this second survey for the volunteers, to have them help identify where they have volunteered previously. That's all I have, Kiki.
Great. So all of you will be getting that in an email. So please do share that with your respective members and or respond to that one. So again, I'm going to remind you of a couple things before we leave here today, that next month we will have a presenter regarding the economic impact of the building industry in the community. And that'll be done by the current president of the NIBCA, Gary Hall. And also we will be presenting to councils and planning and zoning commissions some of the tools that they can use to work with our development and building and landowner community in order to help us with the local worker housing crisis. Then lastly, there's volunteer needs for the VISTA position that EDC has, for the home share program. They need a board member. And so if you can please post that in any of your newsletters and share that information out, as well as it seems like we had one other volunteer need out there. Just those 3. And so that's all I have. Next month, I will share the updated PowerPoint with you. And please feel free to email me with questions or anything you'd like to see us review at our next month meeting. It's July. I expect the other half of you will be on vacation, and I will be reading a bunch of people's subcommittee reports then, but I'm happy to do that. So thank you all again for your participation, and do email me if you have questions or comments on programs and things that you'd like to have us include in the partnership work. And that's all we have for today, unless anyone had a question that wasn't answered. I think Lauren put some more information in the chat box about the VISTA member and what that would entail.
Kiki?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Ed.
Oh, Ed. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit of a comment. You brought up the NIBCA. I had a meeting with Gary Hall, and looks like there were 7 or 8. There were some builders and the like there, and they made some interesting comments. And one of the comments that they made pertained to land trusts. And there is a feeling, and someone brought it up earlier, that they expect litigation involving the possibility there. And they're being very cautious now. We were talking about the costs earlier, and they're being very cautious about building to oversupply and the like, which is what we keep hearing will hopefully reduce the prices. but they are saying that they're not really going to be doing that because it's dangerous for them these times. And one of them said that one of the biggest problem is they can build I think it was a 1,400 square foot home for, bottom line, $300,000 before land costs. So that's a huge part of the equation here. So I just found it was an interesting educational meeting.
Yeah, and we're trying to, that's one of the reasons we're having a lot of the NIBCA folks and more of these presenters bring these facts forward. We want to continue to be a resource. And it's also one of the reasons that Lindsay and the Regional Realtors Association is working on a state level to put some legislative sideboards in there to avoid the risk of litigation for some of these things. Land trusts have been done all over the state, all over the Northwest, and you know, people can sue over anything. But deed restrictions and some of the occupancy restriction conversations have been ones that we don't want to have a risk for someone do that. We want to help them to be able to do that, to help the cause. And everyone's nervous about that. They have been since we've been talking about it, but we're all looking at the legal ways to do it. Panhandle Affordable Housing Alliance has paid a lot of money to legal counsel in the state to make sure that the templates for those kinds of things are vetted and as secure as they can be. But I really appreciate you bringing some of that information up. Okay, did anyone have anything else? Brooke, it's good to see you.
Maybe I can.
Oh, go ahead.
Just
James?
add a couple comments. One thing about the whole idea of a land trust, the land trust is just a terminology that gets used. The idea of doing land leases and the structures around that have been established here. If you know Golden Spike and Rathdrum, it is something that has existed, and the entire justification is a trade-off, right? You get a benefit for buying inside of a structure where you have some restrictions. That's pretty straightforward. And it's still going to be one of those things where until it's more commonplace, the individuals and businesses that haven't been involved with it are going to be a little nervous. But there is certainly existing, as Kiki mentioned, we have structures that do that purpose, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit purpose for restrictions of a certain kind. And it's pretty standardized in the state of Idaho. But the idea with pushing for legislation is to take all those questions out of the minds of developers and investors and everybody else. If it's codified, if the state provides some specific kind of support, then you don't have to worry about that nuisance lawsuit and otherwise. But it is certainly something that's viable. And I think it's one of the things that the reason you're hearing people having hesitancy is because they are thinking about ways to do something about it. So the good news is people are thinking about that as a vehicle. And it seems to be, as far as everybody can see, one of the best, most viable vehicles to try and create something that has some sort of separation from the speculative market that's being driven solely by demand.
Yeah. Thank you. James has a wealth of knowledge in that area, so I appreciate you speaking up about that too. Great, great teams. Anything else from anyone? If not, I will leave Taryn to getting the weekly update draft done so that we can put that on the website right away. And please remember to share out with all of your organizations that is the easiest, fastest way to just keep up to speed as to what we're doing. It's usually about 4 or 5 paragraphs. It doesn't take a lot. It's pretty easy to find. It's right on the homepage. So that weekly update is kind of one of the best ways to keep your groups informed about what we're doing. Any questions, send to me, and I will see all of you next month, except for the ones, of course, who are on vacation. But enjoy the sunshine, and we will look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.